Hi guys, hope you're all doing well. This lecture is about one of the most, let's say, salient results of language contact, which is code switching. When we refer to code switching, we directly should make reference that there is more than code in the performance of a speaker, which means that code switching is the ability of a bilingual speaker or a multilingual speaker. That is, the speaker should be at least a bilingual, that is, competent in at least two codes or two languages to be able to practice or to perform code switching in his or her speech. Now, code switching, of course, is the automatic outcome, is a direct outcome, is a direct result of language contact, which means that when language comes into contact due to, for example, wars or migration or trade or business, and when there is contact between people, of course, there is contact between languages. So, code switching, that is the alteration between two codes or two languages, is the direct outcome of language contact. It is a direct or an automatic or a natural result of language contact, which means, or in other words, when languages come into contact, of course, there are different results. Among them is code switching, which refers to the alteration of or the use of more than two languages in the performance of the speaker. Gampers defines code switching. By the way, you can follow those definitions in the documents given on the platform. Defines code switching as the juxtaposition. When we refer to a juxtaposition, the term juxtaposition in the dictionary refers to two things being placed one close to the other. That is, as if the items are in a neighborhood. So we put something close to the other, and those things in our let's say domain are the codes or the languages. The juxtaposition within the same speech, which means that we are going to place one code next to the other, and or even one element from one code placed within or close to another element from another code, which means we can place one word from a language plus the other word from the other language, or one phrase from this language and the other phrase or the remaining sentence from another language, and so forth. So, it is the juxtaposition within the same speech, exchange of passages of speech belonging to two different grammatical systems or subsystems. And when we refer to a grammatical system, we directly refer to it as the language. So any language has a grammatical system. Any dialect is also a subsystem of the whole language. And in here, we can refer to systems as either a word or phrase, sometimes even morphemes, and sentences, utterances, and so forth. So the more we bring to our language, and the way in which we bring items to our language is going to bring us a different type of code switching, as we are going to see later on. So within a conversation, for Gappers, he says that within a conversation there is a juxtaposition. That is, within the same speech of a given speaker, there is a juxtaposition, which means a neighboring of items or placement of one item close to the other within the same passage or a conversation or a sentence or a speech, and so forth. Okay, so it is an alteration, it is a neighboring, it is a juxtaposition or the use of two codes, one close to the other. One code from a given language, the second code from a different language. For Omar, the code switching is referred to as the alteration or the alternating use of more than one language, which falls under the same thing that we have said, that during a conversation, speakers tend to use more than their mother tongue or their L1. And it's the case of bilingual speakers such as Algerians, who are bilinguals of Arabic and French. So in our conversation, we use our dialectal Arabic or our, let's say, regional dialect, and there is or we switch or we mix different items from the French language or from the other language, and then we are or like that we are experiencing or performing code switching. The same thing exists for us as language learners. For example, English learners, we most of the time use English in our conversations, even if it is in dialects, like when you are just speaking about something or speaking to a friend and you insert some expressions like, you know, you see, I think, and so forth. So those things or this performance is known as code switching. That is, we switch from one code to the other. There is a mixture, but we switch for a purpose. We are going to see the right or the exact definition of code switching because there are functions related to code switching. Now, classification of code switching. When we refer to classification of code switching, we should give reference to two ways, or which codes are really to be taken into account for the performance of code switching or for the definition of code switching. So we have said that at the very beginning that many scholars and linguists define code switching as the alteration or the use of more than one language. So when we say code switching, it's equal for them as language switching. But there are other circumstances where we do not only switch languages, but we also switch varieties of the same language, where there is the high and low variety, back to the diglossia lecture, or two or more dialects, as in the Algerian context we have different dialects that we can switch from one to the other. So when we switch from one language to the other, or when there are two different languages or more in our speech, our code switching is external or cross-linguistic. That is, there are or we have two different languages in the process. However, when we switch between two varieties, for example, standard Arabic and dialectal Arabic, which is the high and the low, our code switching is internal. That is, we are within the same language, within the same, let's say, global system. We use two different subsystems, which are the standard and the dialect. We can also exercise code switching by the use of two or more dialects, which means, for example, we are Tlemcenese, we speak our Tlemcen dialects, which is the urban dialects characterized by the glottal stop. Sometimes, in order to avoid the use of the glottal stop, we have to switch to another dialect. So our switching in this case is an internal switching or internal code switching. That is, we are within the internal the internal structure of the language, of the same language, but we are switching between two or more dialects. Okay, so when we say code switching, we do not only mean language switching or switching among two different languages, but we can also refer to it as switching between or among varieties of the same language, where we refer to the high and low variety, which means the standard and dialect or regional variety, and we can switch among different regional dialect or societal dialects, where one dialect is spoken in a region and a different dialect is spoken in another region, but we have different functions and different reasons for our code switching. So all in all, code switching refers to the use of more than one code or alternating between two codes. And we have said that the term code is a neutral term. Which is equal to a variety. When we say code, we can refer to a language, as we can refer to a dialect, we can refer to an accent, and so forth. So here, code switching refers to the juxtaposition of codes, and here codes refer to languages, to varieties of the same language, or to or more dialects. Alright?